All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the magplus webinar for this morning. Let me clear some windows out of the way so we can get started. My name is Mike Haney. I'm the Chief Product Officer of magplus and a frequent host of webinars and tutorial videos. So we're going to do something a little bit different today, something we've been wanting to do for a little while, in which we're going to tackle what I'm calling 10 things I hate, no wait, I love about magplus. What we want to do is take the questions that we get a lot in our support forums and that we hear, all of us who interface with you guys out there using the tools, the things we hear most commonly as troubles or challenges or errors or bugs that you guys are getting, and do them all in one set here. So especially for those of you completely new to the brand, in case you might run into one of these things, you'll know what it is you're getting. So this is kind of the agenda here of what we're going to do. We're going to start with some simple setup things. We're going to dive into a couple of things that we see frequently in the plugin, a couple of things in the production tool, and then a final thing in publish for those of you that are already using the tools, building, publishing with it, and getting an error when you're trying to handle the new Retina MIB. So for those of you who aren't at that yet, we're going to do that last, so you can drop off if you want to, and we'll try to go sort of in the order that you'll encounter these things as you're using the tools. Before we get started, I just want to point out a couple of other things on our website here. So one is that we now have the reviewer app, which is the app that lets you review your content on device, live, fully functional, underneath your fingers while you're building it. We've had it in the App Store for a long time for iPad. It's now out in Google Play for 10-inch Android devices, and we also just got it up for the Amazon Fire. So if you've downloaded the tool since the 3.2 update about a month ago, you've seen we now have templates for the Kindle Fire, and the Reader app will be coming out for that soon. But you can start playing around with what it's like to build a magplus issue for the Kindle Fire at that size. 1024 by 600 is that resolution, so it's a little bit different size than the iPad you've been working with. And you can go get that reviewer and try it out. The other thing I wanted to point out is the support forum. So a lot of you get in touch with us a lot of different ways, but this is really where we're throwing a lot of our love and our work is out here into this help and inspiration section of the site. So we've got a bunch of articles out here. All the instructions you've gotten from us before, these are all out here now as individual articles on the site. We're adding to it literally every day when we get new questions. We've got a pretty good search function here, but if something doesn't come up when you're searching, be sure to look through these categories down here, and hopefully it's straightforward. And also wanted to point out that we've got a forum out here called feature requests, and this is where anything that you wish the tool set did, that you wish you could be able to do with it, something you'd like to see come in the future, put a post up there for us. And as soon as those come in, we see them, and we'll jump in and we'll reply to you right away and say, yes, that's on the roadmap, or actually you can do that now, or hey, good idea, we'll take a look at that, and keep it updated in here for where those ideas are at. Of course, from this area here, we've highlighted a few selected topics, some of the things we're getting most commonly, and of course you can still get to our video tutorials, these recorded webinars, all this stuff. So support.magplus.com, you just need a magplus account, free magplus account to log in. You know, really come out and check this out. There's a lot of great information out here, and pretty much everything I'm going to cover today is covered in an article out here. So if you do any of these things, you don't want to go back and watch the whole webinar, you can probably find the answer out here. So with that said, let's dive into our first issue. This is one we get a lot, and it's a really it can be incredibly frustrating, but it's super duper simple. We thought we'd start with an easy one. People saying, I can't see the buttons that you're telling me I'm supposed to see to review things or to export or even to add links or movies or audio. Your tutorial shows them there, but I'm not seeing them in my plugin. What the heck? So let's show you what typically happens and is the cause of that. I'm just going to open up, here's a sample document. We'll dive into this one a little later to show some other things. But you'll see here in my plugin down at the bottom, I've got my fast review, full review, export buttons, those you need to do things. And if I click on an object here, I get the option to add link, movie, audio. So why would you not see those? Well, you might not see this link, movie, and audio if you don't have an object selected, because you're always adding those things to another object. So that could be one thing. You'll notice when I select off of it, so now I have nothing selected, there's no buttons down here. So just make sure you've got an object selected and you're going to see these buttons. The other one that can happen sometimes is when you first load the plugin, sometimes the plugin itself is a little bit smaller. This is a window that you can resize like any other InDesign plugin window. And for some reason on some devices, some screens sometimes, when you first open up the tool set and start using it, it's shrunk like this. So there's more stuff down here, but you can't see it. Simple way to fix it, just grab the corner here and pull it out. And then you'll see that you see those buttons. So that's number one. Hope that helps. Just expand the plugin, make sure you got an object selected. You should see all of the buttons that are available to you here. All right, number two, my review isn't working. As a lot of you know, the way that the magplus system works is we've got this great tool called the magplus reviewer. I'm going to jump out here to my simulator to show you. We'll come back to that layout in a minute. So here's the icon for the magplus reviewer. This is free out in the iTunes store, and it's the app that talks to both the plugin and the production tool so that you can see what you're doing in real time. And the way that these two systems talk to each other is over Wi-Fi. They both have to be on the same Wi-Fi network to communicate, so that when I hit review out here, what's really happening is that the system is doing all the conversion, it's writing the XML that makes up our file format, which is a MIB, and then it's pushing it out to the device. It's putting it in a folder on your computer, and then it's going to push it out to the device, and it's going to do all that automatically. And the way these two systems talk to each other is through this IP address here. So basically, as long as your iPad is on a network, it's going to have an IP address. And as long as this IP address matches what's here in the settings, so you're saying push review to this device, this is how you're identifying device, it should work. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it doesn't for a couple of different reasons. It might be that your internal Wi-Fi network has certain protections on it, firewalls, etc., that don't allow that to happen, that interferes with that kind of traffic. We see this a lot in big corporate networks. It's even happened to us sometimes here in our building with some of our old networks. The other way it may not be able to do that, or you might think you can't do that, is what if you're not near an internet connection? What if you're on an airplane and you need to work on some layouts and do things? Well, there's a really easy workaround for this. There's actually two workarounds. I'll cover the first one first, which is really the easiest. As long as the computer that you're working on, and I'm just going to talk about Macs for a second here first, because that's really the most common. As long as your computer has a Wi-Fi card in it, an airport card in it, and pretty much everything within the last several years it'll come with that ability. You can actually create a network from your device. You just go down here under your little Wi-Fi icon to create network. And what's going to happen when you do that is it's going to create a Wi-Fi network that is beaming out from your computer here, and then your reviewer app, your iPad, can join that network. So you just do it the way you join any network. You'd go in here into settings, and I'm just going to do this now. Let me hit the create network button. So you'll see you get a network name. You can even put security on it if you want. Now what it's going to do is create a new Wi-Fi network underneath here. And I just want to make sure I don't disconnect myself while we're doing this. So sometimes it takes a little while to do. But you'll see that it'll create a new network up here. It's not going to do it today. There we go. So now you can see I've got a new network right here called Mike Haney's iMac, and if I go into my settings, and here on my simulator it's not going to come up, but normally here in your settings you'd see the ability to select a network, and you just select that network. So that's really all there is to that. That's really the simplest workaround. If your internal network isn't working, just create a network here and then join it on your iPad. And when you do that, you're going to see that your reviewer app gets an IP address the way it's supposed to, and then you can put that IP address in here and the two pieces are going to talk to each other. Now I mentioned the airplane case. This actually works even if you don't have an internet connection, because you don't need an internet connection. At no point in this reviewing is anything going out to the internet and coming back down. You can do that. That's a whole nother topic that we can cover at a different webinar, but The straight review, when it's just going right here from InDesign or from the production tool to the device, is just traveling over Wi-Fi, not the internet. So if you're on an airplane, you can actually do this to review to your iPad. You can create a network here, it'll beam out a Wi-Fi signal, and you can join it from your iPad. Now the other way you can sort of get around this, if you're so inclined, is you can use the simulator. You see, that's what I do in the webinars and a lot of the tutorials, because it's easy to show the effect on the device. The simulator comes with Xcode. If you have an Apple developer account, which you need if you want to publish apps with magplus, you can download Xcode and you'll get this simulator. And then we've got out on our support site a version of your app, the one I'm using right here, and we release one for every new release that'll run in this simulator. And if you're using the simulator version, there's a really neat little trick that one of our iOS developers me, but you don't even really need Wi-Fi going on. You can put in an IP address that just makes these two things talk directly, because they're literally on the same computer. They're not actually beaming out over any kind of a signal. All right, I think we're back up there. Sorry, folks, if you got cut off. I hope everybody's joined back on now. It seems my computer got a little overwhelmed trying to do all of these different things and show the streaming and show that I'm getting a thumbs up from one of our guys here, which I guess means that you all are hearing me again. Sometimes the streaming software gets a little overwhelmed if you're trying to do too many things at once. It overwhelms the CPU, but I'm seeing perfect streaming now, so I'm going to assume you're all hearing me and seeing me. So let me just jump back quick to what I was talking about, and that's well, jump out to this one. My review isn't working. You know, your normal Wi-Fi review isn't working. It's really simple to deal with that. All you're going to want to do is go up under your Wi-Fi and hit Create Network. And that's going to create your own network here on your Mac that's going to beam out from your Mac, and then your iPad can join it. And you can do that even if you don't have an internet connection. The other thing I wanted to show you guys quick is if you're using this simulator that you get with Xcode, with the Apple developer account, and you're running the special version of the magplus Reviewer app here on the simulator, you can actually kind of do a backdoor into the simulator. So you'll see if I go back into InDesign, hopefully my computer is not getting angry at me again. Let's see if we can get into InDesign. Here we go. So now for the IP address for the simulator, anytime you're using the simulator, don't worry about the IP address that comes up here. Instead, put in this IP address, 127.0.0.1. And what that does is it basically sends this file to the internal memory of the computer, which then is read by the device. It's just kind of a backdoor in. And you'll see when you do that, it's really, really quick to do the instant review, because you're not going over a network, you're just going local. So that's our two answers to my review isn't working. Either create your own network up here, or use the simulator and use that special IP address to beam directly to the simulator. Okay, so that's a couple of setup things. Let's dive in now to some of the more common things we see when you're actually building stuff, when you're actually building pages. These first two are the ones we see most often. The little quirky things about the system, and once you know them, you can work around them really easy, and they will not be things you hate anymore. But when you first get them, boy, can they be frustrating. So the first one we're going to show you here is, let me jump to this contents file as an example. So you'll see what I said here is my blocks are all turning white. Sometimes what happens when you're building things and you're layering objects in different orders in InDesign and putting some objects like this quote here on top of this picture, these are both on the same layer. If I go to my layer here, these are both on my main content layer. I got this and I got that, and this looks like it should work great, right? Well, let me hit the fast review. And then we'll pop out to the simulator and we'll see what happens. This is not what you want to happen. This is not what you want to see. I've got a big white box around this text. My little adventure issue up here is now a big white box. Why is that happening? Well, the reason that's happening is because of the way the system is trying to convert everything to images when it does the export, or even when it does the review. It's doing the same thing. It's doing all of its own conversion, and it's trying to convert everything to images, and it's trying to sort of flatten things, because these are all on the same layer. So it's going, okay, these are all on the same layer, and it's converting these things to images. In this case, probably a JPEG is what it's converting it to. So instead, I'm getting this outline of this text box that I have in here, and it's not looking good. And this thing too, I'm getting this kind of funky box around it. Really simple way around it. All I need to do is take my objects. In fact, I'm going to take everything that's on this main content layer back here, and I'm going to select it. If I right-click on this layer, I can select all items on that background layer. Oop, and I see I got a kind of hidden one out here, which I'm going to delete. It's a good way to check for hidden objects as well. I selected, right-click, select all items, and I saw that something funky was being selected out here, so you can delete that, get those extra things out of your layout. So now I know I've got everything on this layer selected, and I'm just going to group them. You can go up here under Object Group, or just Command G for those of you that use InDesign. You know that's the one. Now that I've grouped everything on here, now let me hit Fast Review. And you're going to see that this shadow, cool shadow effect that we've got on here, that's going to come through. All right, so now this is working just as we want it to. We've got our little shadow effect. This is coming through. My adventure issue is rendering correctly. Because basically what we just told the system is these things are all on the same layer. They're on this back main content layer, so I don't need them to pin anywhere. I don't need them to pin individually. So just go ahead and treat this all as one image. If we looked at the output file here, in fact, we can do that. Oh, not that one. Let's go into this one. So here's my review folder. This is where, when I just hit review, this is where it's putting stuff, right? So here's the page I was just reviewing. If I go into here under assets, these are all the things that the system just wrote. Let me just do a quick preview on this, and you'll see this whole layer got treated as one image. So I got to preserve all that cool shadow effect, all the outline, everything on it worked perfectly. Grouping is your friend in magplus. Anytime you're trying to do something with an interesting outline to it, against another background, where you're getting these kinds of weird boxes around text boxes and those sorts of things, group the stuff together and you're going to see better results. Now sometimes that's not as possible because you want things to actually pin. And that's why we have this be pinned blocks layer. So if I jump back out into this layout, I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so when I turn this to this orientation, you can see the designer wanted this contents block to pin to the left here and wanted this to pin to the right here, so that they move dynamically when I turn the device. So that's why he's put these objects here, and you can see he's grouped this. So we've got the contents, word, this little box right here, the date, are all grouped together, and this whole group then is going to move with the nice outline because it's here on the pinned blocks layer. And this content, our text here, is all on the A layer. And this is all grouped as well. You can see that the logo here, the text box, the nice shaded box behind it, that's how we're getting this really nice transparency. If we go back here, we can see this text box has just a little bit of transparency through it. That's all being preserved because this was all grouped together here and it's being treated as one image by the system. So if anytime you're getting the weird white boxes, the weird outlines, just group the stuff and that'll solve it. Here's another big one, another sort of weird quirk about the system. This one I can't really defend. It really is kind of a quirk of the system. So all I'm going to tell you now is not why it's this way, but rather how to just work around it. Because again, once you know the rules of the system, it's really easy to do, and you'll be doing it in your sleep. When you don't know the rules of the system, and some of these little quirky things can get really frustrating. Things are not in the order I set them. So let me jump out to this really basic silly layout here, because this is going to be the easiest way to show you what I'm talking about. In InDesign, of course, right here I've got everything on my B slide, so we're not even messing with layers. This is true on any of the layers here, but we're just going to talk about B layer to keep it simple. Of course, in InDesign, I can always take my objects that I've got here. I can go under Object, Arrange, and I can move them around, right? I can reset the order. This is a really basic function of InDesign, and I can make them work the way, layer the way I want to. So I get this kind of an effect. Let me just turn off my frame edges here so you can see this a little bit better. So I got my 3 boxes. Let's see what happens when I review this. So now you can see what happened. This did not preserve the order that I set in InDesign. This red box is supposed to be on top, and the green box is supposed to be behind. And yet it's moved things around. Now let me make this even more confusing for you. I'm going to delete everything off of this layer. I'm going to go up to my A main layer, my A layer here, and I'm going to paste it back in. Same order here. Now let me hit fast review. Now it's doing kind of sort of what I want it to do, right? I'm getting my red is on top, but this is still not right. This is still on top of this one here. So there is a pretty simple fix around it. Basically, the reason it's doing this, let me just take it out and show you the support article, and give me a chance to show you how search works out here. Search for layering, my first thing that comes up here. So we've got a good support article about here, which will explain this. But basically what's happening is that the system, when it's doing the conversion, right, when I'm exporting or I'm reviewing, and the system is turning your InDesign layout into a magplus file, it's reading from top to bottom. And that's how it's reading the order of the objects you put on it. So on the B layer, it's that the thing that it reads first, from top to bottom here, it puts in the back. And the thing it reads next, it puts in the middle, and the thing it reads next, it puts on the front. So it's ordering not according to what you've done in InDesign, but top to bottom order that things appear on the page. On the A layer, it's doing the opposite. It's going to stack things, the top thing, like we saw here, first, then this, etc., according to this top-bottom order. So it seems kind of complicated, right? But really just the only way to really remember this or to think about it is just what matters here is not necessarily the order you've put things in InDesign, but where they appear top to bottom. So here's the kind of simple way to cheat this. I'm going to throw these all back on the B layer just for simplicity, but this same trick will work on the A layer. Okay, so let's review this again so we can see what our effect is, right? Okay, I want this to actually be on top. So because the system reads grouped things as one object, that's the thing we were just talking about, right, where we can group things together so we don't get funky white boxes on them. All I need to do is turn this into a group that appears in the right order top to bottom that I want it to be. And the way to do that is just to draw a little invisible box. So because I want this to be in back, I want the system to see this as kind of the last thing on the page. Actually, that's going to work a little better if I do it the other way. Let's do this and say, well, I want this to be the one that's in front. So what I'm going to do is draw an invisible box up here above this, right? So now as far as the system is concerned, I'm going to take these two things, I'm going to group them together. So now even though this is the only thing I'm seeing, as far as the system is concerned, this whole group is the first thing it will encounter, which means it'll make this the front object on it, just like I want it to be. So just to prove this point, let me bring that to front. Now if this trick works, you should see this green box appears even in front of this blue box. And it did not work because I put them on the wrong layer. Let me just grab everything here again and show it here. You can see this is a little bit of a tricky one to get your head around, which is why sometimes it even confuses me. But it's that top to bottom effect. There you go. So that was, I had my math backwards, and that's why I say this in almost every webinar, but instant review is your friend. Instant review is a beautiful thing because I just did something that I thought was the right way, and all I had to do was hit review and go, oh, I was wrong. It's not the way I want it to be. Try something else, hit the review, say, all right, this is what I wanted it to do. So now you can see that even though here in InDesign, this green is on the back layer, the system's reading top to bottom and ordering in that order. So the very first thing it encounters here is what it's going to put in front. The next thing it's going to put in the middle. The next thing it's going to put in the back. So if we look back at our, so all we're doing is hacking the system to say, no, this is actually the first thing because I've grouped it with this invisible box here. So you can see this is the effect that we're getting, right? Our green box is the top thing because we've grouped it with our little invisible box up here. The next thing the system saw as it went top to bottom is this thing, and then the red box. So that's that's sort of the trick, the workaround around layering. Use invisible boxes to group things in the top to bottom order that you want them to appear. This is a tricky one. I understand, and I know some of you are still going to be a little bit frustrated by it, but I encourage you, now that you know that trick, try it. Try it on both the layers that you're trying to work on. Group some things together with invisible boxes, top to bottom. Just remember that's the order it's reading things in, and you will get the effect you want, I promise. And after you do this a few times, it'll become really second nature as you're starting to build these and trying to work with this. The other way to preserve this kind of ordering, let me show you the other really simple way, is to do the grouping that we just talked about. So if I didn't need these things to move individually, like right here, I haven't set any pinning on these. I'm fine with these all appearing as one block. If I just take and group these together and then review it, they're going to appear exactly how I want them to. So you can always do that. But this trick about how to order them right is when you need things to move individually. Let's say I wanted each one of these things to pin differently, left or right, and I need to control the order they appear in. That's when you want to use your little invisible box top to bottom trick. And again, just search for layering out on the site. You're going to get this really handy little diagram, some explanation about it. Try this a couple times. Like I said, it'll become second nature, I promise. All right, now let's talk about links. A couple of things with links we want to point out. One of the things we hear is my links don't work. Well, there's a certain way to create, there's a few different ways you can create links. There's sort of a right way and a not as right way to do it. So I want to show you the right way to do it, which is going to give you good, consistent results with your links working. And let me jump into another example here to show you. We'll just use this. This is a page out of Outside Magazine's May issue. And they've got, you can see here, a bunch of links they've created. These are just hotspots over websites for the products they're being talked about here. So here you can see they've grouped, again, grouping, right? They've grouped this text box. I'm going to ungroup and you'll see all the things they've grouped together. They've got our text box here. We got this little widget here is all grouped together. I'm going to select all these items again on this layer and I'm going to group them. So now I got my whole text box here moving as one. So I want to put a link onto this dzrshoes.com here, right? I want to have a link over the top of this. Really simple to do. Here's how you should do it. Select the object that you want the link to be attached to. Anytime you're adding links, movies, or audio, always select an object first, come down here, and click Add Link. It's going to draw a really huge box here because it's taking everything I grouped everything with something that was kind of hidden out here on the side. So I've gotten this. So you can see when I selected, I had this huge object here. Let me get rid of that. Let me go back now. Let's make a little more reasonable group. All right, see now I've got my group. Add link. So now it's going to draw this box over the top of the entire group that I just had selected when I said add link. But I can resize this, right? I can take this down and make it any size that I want it to. And it's a good thing. Sometimes people ask us, why doesn't the link just appear over the text? Well, people's fingers are kind of big. And if your link is really specific, it can sometimes be hard for people to tap it. So it's nice to be able to make it any size you want here and give people a little buffer room around it. Or maybe you want this entire text block here to all be linkable, knowing people are going to tap and say, boom, I just want those shoes. So that's the way that you want to create a link. And the reason we do that is because if this object here had some pinning on it, it doesn't, but let's say it's got a right pin on it. When somebody turns the device, this object's going to move, right? It's going to do that because that's the way our pinning works. It moves things dynamically. And if these two things aren't linked, if I didn't select this first and say, add a link to this box, my little hotspot box here that I just lovingly crafted over the top of my URL wouldn't move with it. It would sit here. And so then when somebody went to tap on the hotspot, it wouldn't work. because this didn't know that it was supposed to pin move dynamically along with this. So that's why it's really important to always select an object first and then hit add link. The way that some folks do it is they come over here and they draw an invisible box over the top of this, right? And then say add a link to that. That gets you the nice sort of size that you want. It's not really any easier because you still had to draw a little box here. But now this link, this is attached to some kind of invisible box out there. It's not attached to my text box that's going to move the way I want it to. Yeah, you could go give that invisible box extra settings, but at some point it's going to get sort of broken between them. So don't create links off invisible boxes unless you really have to, and if you do, be careful that you've got the right settings on there. Always grab an object, a group of things first here, hit the add link. Same thing with movie. Same thing with movie, so that your movie space and your hotspot moves and pins and snaps along with the text or the play button or the whatever that you want it to be attached to. That's why you want these hotspots attached to objects. So let me show you the other thing that tends to happen here. And I think this is I'm going to show you how this is actually broken right now. So let me just hit fast review. Oh, I got to save it. There's another one you get, right? Let's take this one as a bonus 11th. It won't review. That's because we need to save it first. Anytime you open up the template, because it's a template, it needs to be saved. You have to kind of do a save as to make it your own so that you're not saving over your template. All right, so let's do a fast review now and see if our links work. And I'm going to give you a little spoiler, they're not going to. And that's going to take us to number 6. My links still don't work. I said add link the way you told me to. I selected my group, I hit my add link button, and it's still not working. What is wrong? And you'll see what happens. Yep. See, I'm tapping my hotspot here, and all it's doing is bringing up the menu. Here's the problem. Remember I was showing you this group here? And when showing you this, I ungrouped things. I'm doing it on my keyboard, but you can go up here and say group and ungroup. It's just Shift Apple G and Apple G. I ungrouped everything, and then I said, okay, now I'm going to group everything back together again. The way that the system knows that this hotspot here is tied to this group here is through what's called an object ID. Basically what it does is any group or any block, anything you have, the system can give an ID to. And then with the hotspot here, there's a field that says reference object ID. Pretty simple, right? What is the object that you want this box to be attached to? And what happens when we group and ungroup things is that our object ID gets erased. So this thing right here thinks its reference object ID is this, but when I grouped and ungrouped it, I destroyed the object ID that this thing had. That's because as far as the system knows, you've created an entire new group. Every time you regroup something, that's a new object as far as it's concerned, so it erases the object ID. The same thing will happen to pop-ups. If you're trying to make pop-ups, those also have an object ID. So again, you say, well, this hotspot's attached to which pop-up? Object ID is how those things know it. So there's a couple of things to deal with this. One, that our creative director, Matt, always recommends to folks is do all of your hot links last. Make sure you get your layout where you want it to be. You're very happy with it. You know you're not going to be having to be ungrouping and regrouping to change the stuff. And make as a last step that you go in, right? Let's see, you've got these out of here. You go in, you select your object, you click add link, and then you start to make all of your hot links. Just make that your final step, and then you know that's not going to happen. Because you'll see what happened now when I selected this and I hit the add link is it automatically assigned an object ID to my group, and when I hit the link it automatically ties these things together. But now watch. I'm going to ungroup, right? And I'm going to group it back together. Pick those things, group again. Now I don't have an object ID, which means this one isn't right. But here's a little trick. So it's a good practice, best practice, to just do these things kind of last in the process, but sometimes it's not going to be possible. So here's a little trick for you. You don't need to use the automatic embedded object ID here. It doesn't matter what this object ID is as long as it's the same. So one thing you can do, let's say you've done this, right? And And you've already got a number of links on this page that are all reading this object ID. Well, then you broke it. Just give it back this same object ID. Just copy it out of here, select your object, and paste it. So now these are sharing, right, the same object ID. Everything's right. The other little trick you can do here, if you get this kind of situation where you've created a few boxes and you want to create some more, you don't have to keep clicking the Add Link button. You can literally just copy and paste these. If you hold down the Option key and drag it, there I get another box. I can do it again and I can get another box up here. And it's going to keep all the properties of the box that I just copied. So it's going to have the right reference object ID in here. It's going to be a link. It's going to be an embedded browser. Now the one thing to note is it's also going to copy the URL. So if you're going to do that, if you're going to just duplicate your hotspot boxes, make sure you jump in and change the URL, or people are going to go to this one when they're trying to go to that one. All right. So grouping and ungrouping breaks your object ID. Just beware of that. If things aren't working, if your links aren't working, check that object ID field and make sure what's in it when you select your hotspot matches what's in it when you select your object that you want it to be pinned to. Hopefully that makes sense to everybody. Again, this is all out on the site. All right, that was number 6. So here's a kind of an interesting trick. This is really more of a trick than a problem. We don't necessarily hear this a lot, but we just want people to be aware of it, that it is something you can do. Of course, one of the great things about magplus, one of the things we all love about it, is that we get this pinning function, right? We'll just review this one again, show you what that means. One layout works for both orientations. It's a great time saver. You're not building it twice. I turn, you can see my image is just cropping differently, right? You can see now it's kind of cropping on her knee. If I turn, it's cropping out here. And these objects have moved, so I got a nice layout in both orientations. Sometimes you may need to have a different layout load on a different orientation for whatever reason. Maybe you've got an image you can't crop. When we worked with Maxim magazine, which is one of the great magazines on our platform, they take beautiful photos of beautiful women and celebrities, and they really hate to crop those photos. You know, they want it to appear the full photo the way they took it, and they don't want it to crop. Transworld Snowboarding, another great title of ours, same issue. Gorgeous photography. They just don't want it to crop on here. They want to just load a different size of it on rotate. Fair enough. Sometimes maybe with an advertiser, we also see this there. They want really precise control over how it's working in both orientations, and the pinning is just not going to work for them. So the trick that we can do with that is we just use a simple HTML box. So let me open up a blank template here. We'll update our links. The trick for this and the sample code is also out here on our site. It's under the HTML tricks, under designing, creating a publication. You can see it's not a long article because it's really pretty simple. But we've got the sample code out here that you're going to need for this. And I've downloaded and unzipped it, and I've got it here. So all it is an HTML file, and then it's got some JavaScript here that you need, and then it's got the images that I want to load. So basically what you're going to do, here's the trick that you're doing, is you're turning your layout into images, and then you're using an HTML window to load different images when the browser, or in this case the window, resizes. So let me show you how that works. And I'm just going to show you with a couple of super simple color blocks, just so you can see the effect of how it's going to work. But you can imagine these being anything, right? So this is what I want to load in horizontal. I want a red box. And in vertical, I want it to load this brown box. If I open up my HTML file here, there's a whole bunch of code in here. A lot of this doesn't make sense to me. Don't worry about it. It doesn't have to make sense to you either. All you have to know is what you have to change. You can see down here these images that I want to load on different sizes, H and then the vert here, are referenced. And this is just saying where they are. So they're in the images folder / here's the file name. All you need to do, you can copy this code, you can download it off our site, you can make lots and lots of copies of this code. Just put the images you want in the images folder and make sure the names that are here in the HTML doc match what you've named the files out here. So again, you can use this over and over and over again and just put new images in there. and I'll show you how you do that. So all I've done out here on my page, I've opened up an InDesign template. I've just drawn a box that covers the whole space, because in one orientation I'm going to want the full width, in another orientation I'm going to want the full height. So I've drawn one giant, in this case 1024 by 1024 box. I'm just going to put it on the background layer because I don't need anything else on this, so I've just put it back here on the B slides layer. And for the object type, I'm going to say HTML. And then for my file here, I'm going to point to this index.html file. That's literally all there is to it. Now the one thing you need to make sure you have checked is resize on rotate, because that's going to tell the system to pay attention to how big this browser window is, this box we've drawn, in either orientation. Oh, always forget that step. Let me save it here. We'll just call this resize. All right. Now watch what this does. So there's my brown box. Boom, there's my red box. See what it's doing? It's loading a different image when I rotate the device. So if you want to use this for a layout, the way you could do this, let me zoom back out, is just turn your layout into an image. So lay this out twice the way you want it to be. So I'm just going to take and make this a little bit smaller here for purposes of demonstration. And let me just ungroup this. That one we want, but let's say we don't want this one. So if I just grabbed all of these things and I copy them, so all I've done is go up here under Edit, Copy, and I go into Photoshop, and I go File, New. It's going to read what's copied to the clipboard. And it's going to do some thinking here for a minute, but it's going to make me a new document that is exactly this right size here. In this case, I've built this on a Retina, so I've got a bigger, I've got 2064. That's the 2048 is what that should be. But oh, it's because I'm going a little bit outside of the box here. So what it's doing is it's reading everything on the clipboard, and it's going to make me a document that's sized the right way for it. Then I just open up my document and I hit paste, and it's going to drop all of my objects on here. So now I've got an image of my layout. See how that worked? So now I could just go back, and in this case I made it square, but now I could go back and I could relay all this stuff out, and I could make the vertical one I wanted, copy, new document in Photoshop, paste, and I'll have my vertical view, my vertical layout that I want. Then I just throw those images into, let me go back out here, throw those images into my image folder as a horizontal and a vertical, make sure the names match here in my little pink spot in my HTML doc, and away I go. Sounds like it's a lot of steps to it, but it's really not. All you're really doing is loading images. All you're really doing is loading two different images, so you just want to make sure that your layout becomes a static image. Really simple to do. Now you can do that and still have other stuff on top of here. You want to have some hotspots, you want something on the A layer, you can do all that. It's no problem. You can always layer stuff over an HTML element. So it doesn't have to be only this sort of flat one static thing that you're doing. But if you want a background image that crops differently, just use this little embedded HTML trick to do it. Okay, a couple of other really easy things just to wrap up here. We've gotten through the hard stuff, I promise. So I want a double page spread. Let me pop into the production tool, and I'm going to export, or review rather here, something and show you what I mean when I say double page spread. This is a really interesting and kind of unique little feature that we threw in a few releases ago to preserve this notion of what we traditionally think of. Oh, got my wrong device selected. Let me go out here to make this a Retina. On the simulator, you can choose what device you want, but the iPad and the iPad Retina are two different things. So what I've done here is I'm outputting a Retina iPad, or trying to review one, but I was trying to do it on a regular iPad, and that's not going to work. So let me zoom this down so we can see it. Oh, I got to go even smaller. All right, so now we open up our magplus reviewer. There we go. Let's try this again. It's actually a good thing to know as you're starting to do regular iPad and Retina iPad layouts together again. And if you missed how to do that, we got a great support article on it. We also just did a webinar on it a couple weeks ago. But know that a regular iPad can't read a Retina MIB. It's too many pixels for it. It just doesn't work. All right, so now you can see I've got my beautiful Retina thing here. But this is what I want to show you when I talk about a double page spread. You'll see here in my scrubber, it's seeing these two pages. You can see out here, these are two completely different verticals, right? These are two different InDesign documents that I've built. And yet, out here in my scrubber, it's seeing them as one. It's tied them together. And I can do this for as long as I want. I could have one giant sort of horizontal page here if I wanted to. But it's really nice in the context of something like a magazine or an issue because it preserves that notion of a spread that you normally see as you're going through your magazine. Really, really simple trick to do. And I'll open up these two pages just to show you. Here we go. Nope, that's not the one I want. Let me figure out where I put this. Here we go. So I'm going into my folder here, and you can see, like I said, this is two different InDesign documents. So I've got two folders here named the goods 1 and the goods 2. Let me open up that one. Well, that's opening. Well, that's opening. I'm going to go back and open up the second one, and you'll see the really simple trick for how we tie these two together, how we let the system know you should marry them together. Excuse me. It's just here in the vertical ID. For every vertical you create, you got to give it an ID. You want to give it a name. That's what the public sees. That's what your user is going to see. But you want to give it an ID, which is how you identify it. And then there's this little box after the ID that's normally empty. But if you want to tie two things together, just give them the same ID and then sequential numbers here. So this is PSC blah 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 1, and this is PSC blah blah blah, same thing, -2. And if you do that, when you export them out to the production tool, you can see that when I go to grab this and move it around, it's treating these as one unit. And it's even got this little bar over the top of this to show me that it's one unit. You can see here, this page only has its own bar and its own ID, but here they're sharing the same ID. So it's one together. So that's all you have to do. And again, you could do this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We've seen folks do presentations where it's one giant thing tied together. All it's doing is affecting how it's making the plugin. So there's no bad thing, no downside to doing it, or how it's making the thumbnail preview rather. So really simple to do. And you still get this nice kind of snap effect when you go through it, but just for navigation purposes it looks like a spread. All right, another really simple one. Probably could have put this up into setup, but we just put this here. We do get this when people download the tools, they dive into the plugin, right, in InDesign, and they start creating, because this is the fun part, we get to lay all the stuff out. Then you say, all right, I'm happy with everything, and you hit the export button. And I'm not going to do it on that one because that one's a monster. But let's say I go here and I hit the export button and it starts doing all this stuff, and you go, all right, well, now what? Where did this go? What is it doing? And where it went and what it's doing, I'll just cancel out of that one because we don't need to watch it do its thing. But all it's doing is opening up Photoshop and it's converting all of this stuff that we put on here into images, into the right solution, right color space for the iPad or the iPad or the file you've got selected as your output. These are all different sizes, different resolutions, so the system's taking care of a version for you. It's turning text into images as well. And the place where it's putting it is in my issue folder. So here you can see, this is a good sample of how to make a folder structure for your issue. I've got folders for each one of my verticals, and then I've put an extra folder in here that I call, in this case, Retina issue folder, because I'm making a Retina version of the magazine. So I've just made a folder, and where it's going is here. This is where everything that I've just exported is being written to. So the XML that describes it, all the converted assets, etc. It's going into my issue folder. And I set that issue folder right here. Just hit folder. If you don't have one made yet, you can create a new folder and make one, and that's where it's going to go. And then in the production tool, all we do is go up here and we point to the same folder. We just hit the plus button. That's going to open up the file system on my Mac and let me point to a new issue folder. And this is just reading that issue folder to say, okay, what have you exported? So you can see now I can select around. Yep, retina issue folder, that's the one I want. Sorry, I'm getting a little beach ball-y here. So that's where, when you export, that's where it's going. It's going wherever you've told it to go. And you've told it to go there by setting this, this issue folder. So that's all you have to do. And then it's always going to show you the path here. And that can be on a server somewhere. If you normally work off of a server, it can be locally on your machine. It can be wherever you want it to be. And it's going to take care of putting everything into that issue folder for you. So you don't really have to worry about anything other than where that folder is and that you know where that folder is. Okay, last thing, and then we'll let you go for today. This is one we're seeing a little bit more commonly now. We talked about doing a regular MIB and a retina version MIB. So that's how you handle both of these devices rather, is you just go up here under your device, pick the device you want to export to, and you hit the export button. We recommend you create 2 different issue folders. So I can show you an example of that out here. We'll show you outsides because we just saw them do their May issue here. So out here we've got an issue folder. Now they do a preview issue, so they have even another one, but here's their regular. And then for the retina, we just made a new issue folder. So when I want to export this page, let's go back to an outside page. I pick iPad, I pick my folder. In this case, it's just my regular folder because it's just iPad. I hit choose, I hit export. That's done. I go retina. Now I want to pick retina folder, choose, export. Boom, away we go. So what ends up happening is out here in the production tool, you've got 2 different folders you want to point to. You've got your, if I go out here, work, outside, May, got my issue folder. And here in the production tool, it's a little harder to know which one you're looking at because everything's kind of small here, right? And then I can also go out here and I can pick retina issue folder. And it's going to read everything that's in there. And so to create my 2 different versions, I'm going to pick this one, and then I'm going to hit Create MIB. And I'm going to get my final little MIB file. So if I go back out here, you can see I've got my MIB file. That's what I'm going to upload out to publish. What some people are seeing when they're doing this, they're trying to go through these steps, is they get into publish, and we'll just pick on our friends at Alternative Press saw this error yesterday. You can see here, they kept getting errors. Status invalid. They kept getting this error when they tried to upload the MIB file. Go through the upload, and then they'd get this email, an error message that would say it didn't work. And the reason here under the error was MIB file type does not match selected MIB type. But what that means is that somewhere along the way in this, what happened is that an iPad vertical and an iPad Retina vertical got mixed together in this MIB. So when that happens and you hit the Create MIB button here, the system gets confused and it doesn't know what device this is actually for. And that's important because it's actually written into, and I'll show you this, the XML that makes up, if you looked inside of a MIB, if you were to open up a MIB and look inside, you'd see an issue.xml and you'd see all of these assets, right? Here's all my verticals. This is all my converted images. Here's my thumbnails that make up my preview. Some more XML about that vertical, telling the system how to render it. Here in my issue XML file, this is where this is the file that the system's going to read to say, all right, what's going on in this issue? There's a little device thing here, and this is written by the production tool because it's supposed to know what device this MIB is for, so that when your users go download it and say, I want the June issue, the system can go, oh, The guy requesting the June issue, he's on a Retina iPad. Let's deliver him the Retina MIB and not the lower res one, or vice versa. So that's why it's really important the device thing is right in here, and again, that's set in the production tool. So if in here you see device is blank, that means that something's going wrong. Somewhere in here we've mixed in an iPad vertical with our Retina or vice versa, and it's not reading the way it's supposed to. If it does, we'll see the right kind of, oh, these are all messed up, but you'll see a device up here. And if it's not working, the way we know, and you email us and we troubleshoot this, is we look in this XML file and we see device is null. And that's not what we want to see. We want to see this. So if you're getting that error message out in publish when you're trying to upload a MIB, if you're seeing MIB file type does not match select a MIB type, go back and review your issue and make sure that you haven't snuck in a low res vertical in with your Retina or vice versa, and make sure that in your production tool you're seeing a device type up here. If you're not, it's not going to work. And you can let us know in the forum and we'll help you out, but that's almost always the cause of it. So that's our 10 things. Hopefully now you love and not hate about magplus. A lot of information at once, but these webinars are always recorded, so you can go back out and watch it a couple minutes at a time. You can go out and watch just the little bits when you're having this trouble. And again, all of these things are covered out in the support forum. So if you just go out to support.magplus.com, you'll find little text explanations for all of these things, sample files, etc. Hopefully that was helpful for you today. Sorry for the little glitch in the middle. We'll be back next week or in a couple weeks with a new webinar covering some other topics. Until then, everybody take care. Have a good day.